Hey friends, Chris here. Ever had a service technician come out to your home or your business and kind of felt like you got taken advantage of a little bit? Maybe you called around but really didn't put a significant amount of time into that due diligence to dig up all the possible options and maximize that opportunity to save money? Well, that's what we're diving into today. In today's video, I'm going to give you 3 real-life scenarios where I saved at least 20% off of the asking price when someone came out to give me service. And then we're going to touch on the 3 things you need to do to make sure that you can take advantage of those service techs, or at the very least, not have buyer's remorse and maybe feel like you got the best deal possible. All right, so let's dive in. So what are some of the things that maybe you've paid for to have someone come out maybe and repair something? Like let's say you had an electrician come out, you had a plumber come out, you could have had a repair tech on your vehicle. Maybe you have a hot tub or a garage repair. There's many things that you could pay someone to come out and work on your property, right? Or maybe pay someone to come and repair something at your business. Many things, right? There's some things that you could do yourself, which I always encourage people to do. If you're a do-it-yourself kind of person, I always encourage you to do it yourself because you're going to save a significant amount of money. They call that like sweat equity when you're renovating a home. I've done this a ton. But there's also things that maybe I don't feel comfortable doing around the house. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, there are also scenarios where maybe I was just lazy and I kind of rushed into calling someone to come out. And only through the process of getting quotes was I so offended that I dug in a little bit and thought, maybe I could do some of that or all of that work myself. So we're going to talk about those scenarios. All right. So first up, I had a group of people come out and give me a quote on some work I needed done to partition out part of my shop. And this required a full framing of maybe about 30 feet by 18 feet high on one wall and maybe 12 feet by 18 feet high on the other wall. So drywall and framing. And I had a few people come out and quote, and the price ranges for this quote went anywhere from $2,500 all the way up to like $4,000, give or take, okay? And through this process, I thought, man, I really don't know if I'm getting the best deal. Now, I could have done this work myself, but it would have taken me a lot of time and it wasn't worth the hassle. So I began negotiating and I ended up getting the best price down to about $2,500. But I still kind of felt like there was a little bit of room. So if you have the power, if you know that you don't need this work done immediately, that's leverage. What did I do? I waited. And how long did I have to wait? I had to wait about 8 days. After 8 days, I got a call back from that vendor who said, guess what? Hey, I really want the work. I'm willing to do it for $2,000. So without me even asking to go lower in the price, just not responding to his quote, other than saying, thanks for the quote, he came down about 25% or $500 or so. That's a huge savings. Why? Simply because I was patient and I waited. See, if your needs exceed their needs, you're generally not going to get the best deal. If their need for the business exceeds your needs, then generally you're going to get the best deal. Now that's hard to do if you need something done right away, but this was one example. Almost $500, almost 25% savings, and we did the work. It was great. Now, this was a one-off contractor who had a license, but was not one of those big companies. He was kind of like a mom and pop organization, so he was probably a little more willing to lower the bid to get the work right away because he needed the money, right? Lo and behold, though, I asked him to bid on something else, and he never gave me the second bid. So he was either offended I negotiated him down to a certain extent, or was just that kind of a contractor who never responded back to get the additional work. So just understand, sometimes there's a level of professionalism as well that you have to account for, and sometimes there's value in that, right? Okay, so next up. I had some work that I had to get done on my garage doors. I wanted to install motors on my garage doors. So I had a moment of weakness, if you will, and I wanted to just get these done. So I called the garage door company that I had worked with years and years in the past, and they came out to give me a quote. The young guy shows me all of these quotes, and he says on this little iPad, I can get you down to, I want to say it was approximately $1,650 for this work. And I said, great, that sounds good. I'm in a hurry. I'd like to get it done. Let's do it. He says, no problem. Let me just refresh the screen. I'll write up the invoice and we'll go. He refreshes the invoice and immediately says to me, oh, I'm sorry, the price just went up. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? The price just went up. You just quoted me $1,650. He says, yeah, I know. It went up to 1830 or something. And he said, this happens sometimes. And I said, not to me, it doesn't happen. There ain't no way I'm paying above what you just quoted me. He says, let me call the manager. Let me see what I can do. It's a software thing. I can't control the pricing. Gives me all these excuses. So that's ridiculous. You just literally quoted me a price. I said, let's go. You refresh your screen. Now it's going to cost me more. I know this is hard to believe, people, but this stuff happens. This actually happened to me. And he gets on the phone. He's trying to get a hold of the manager. Can't. He says, I'll get back to you. I'm going to see what I can do. I get paid commission, so it affects me too. He's all frustrated. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You get paid commission on garage door motor installs. Okay, good. Good to know for future reference. So never calls back and loses the business, right? That got me thinking, man, I've got to shop around a little bit. So I call another company and ended up getting a quote for around $1,600-ish when it was all said and done. So a little bit better than his quote, pretty good. But nonetheless, I still wanted to negotiate. So I called the third company. I usually call three. I just, like I said, had a moment of weakness. Called the third company. This third company I had also done business for on one of my rental properties 2 years prior. I said to the operator, I've done business with you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and give you an opportunity to bid. This individual says, great, I'll send one of my techs out. The technician comes out. And by the way, that operator, when I asked him, what do you think it would cost for 2 motors to install? He goes, well, the motors will probably cost us about $500 a piece and then install. So I don't know, it shouldn't be too bad. So in my mind, I'm thinking $500 per motor, that's $1,000, and then maybe labor, another $500. Maybe that's going to be about $1,500 worst case scenario. Okay, cool. So the tech comes out. I say, hey, what do you think? He starts walking around. He's looking at things. He's pointing at things. I said, what do you think to install these to me or for me? And he says to me, well, I'm thinking probably around $2,400. And I'm like, what? $2,400? I'm like, you know what? I'm like, you might as well just grab your tape measure and your pen and your clipboard and just head on out, man. I'm like, because we're just wasting each other's time. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean? What do you mean we're wasting each other's time? I said, I just talked to your operator and he told me that the motors would cost like $500 a piece. So I'm thinking maybe like $500 in labor or something. I mean, how long is this thing going to take? It's like a couple of bolts and a plug, right? And he's like, well, hold on a second. I said, no, not only that, man. I said, but I have quotes. I have quotes that were around $1,400. And you're going to come in here at me with a $2,400 quote? That's ridiculous. He's like, hold on. And he goes back to his car and he gets on the phone. You see, this is the game that they play, right? Now, at the end of the day, there are good business owners that do the right thing and give you good, honest quotes, and they have overhead and all that stuff, and I understand that. But this is ridiculous, people. I mean, we're talking about a swing so far from $1,600 to $2,400 for some motors that need to be installed and bolted into the ceiling with plugs. That's insanity, right? And of course, I threw the $1,400 price out because I wanted to get that price as low as I possibly could, and I was trying to see if he would bite. So what does he do? He gets off the phone and he goes, so you said you're a previous customer? I said, yeah, man, I was a previous customer. I just talked to your operators. I'm thinking maybe $1,500, and here you are quoting me this? No way. I'm like, you gotta meet or beat $1,400 or you're out of here. And he says, I'll tell you what we can do. We can do $1,400. Great. Now, by the way, before he got back on the phone with his counterpart, I told him I was willing to pay cash because I didn't know if he'd be able to get down to that low price, and it didn't matter to me. I didn't need to use a credit card. I was going to pay cash anyway. So I got the $1,400 quote. Now, isn't that amazing? There is somebody out there who's actually going to pay these knuckleheads $2,400 to do what should have been somewhere around probably $1,200 to $1,400 to $1,500 worth of work. But if you don't ask, you won't know. You've got to ask. You've got to assume they want the business more than you want the business, right? Or than you need the service, I should say. So, great example. Third up was a hot tub repair. I have a hot tub and the panel went out. The electric panel went out. So I called the hot tub tech. He comes out and I watch him. I always watch service techs. You want to watch them because some of this work you could do yourself and maybe save some of the money. I watch him pry off the panel and I'm like, wow, that's pretty easy. Pries off the panel. And he pulls the side panel off and he like unplugs it. And he's like, okay, it took him 5 minutes. He goes, let me go back to the car. He gets me a quote. He comes back with a $1,200 quote for this repair. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? $1,200? Wow. And before he gave me the quote, he's in the truck. He says, wow, this is an expensive part. So I'm thinking, expensive part. Okay. I asked him to give me the breakdown. Give me the breakdown of the parts and labor. So he breaks it down. He says, man, this part is expensive. It's an $890 part, give or take, right? And then the labor was like going to be $300, or it was going to be $300, but he was giving me a credit for the call they had come out and charge me for, which is like $150. So really another $150 to come and put it back in and whatnot. Okay, great. So here I am thinking, wow, that's pretty expensive. And I said to him, well, is there any other way you could get the parts somewhere else? He said, well, this is the typical rate of the parts. They're just very expensive. So he leaves and I'm all irritated, but it got me thinking, you know what? I need to be shopping. Now, there are not a lot of hot tub repair guys, so I was thinking I may be limited on my options, but what I could do is I could shop for the parts, right? So I called him back and I said, listen, man, I want you to cancel this order. I'm a little frustrated. I can't believe the price of these things. I've looked around and I found the part for around $400, okay? So he was charging me like $875 for this part. It's a stupid LED panel, right? And I said to him, what if I find the part for less? He says, oh, I'll come back and install it for you, no problem. I go, okay, so another $150 beyond the $150 I spent, and you'll come back and install it? He goes, yeah. But see, I had watched him install it, and I thought, I could do that on my own. But I've got to make sure that I have all the adhesive and everything that I saw him tearing apart, and hopefully it'll come with the part. Sure enough, a week later, I get the part. And guess what he told me when I asked him about the markup? I said, how could you charge me $900 almost for a $400 part? He goes, well, the thing is, I thought you wanted it quickly, and it was to find one that was in stock. That was his answer. Why? Because these people don't know what they're doing. They're service techs. They're not salespeople. He just didn't think I'd be questioning it. When I did, he gave me a ridiculous answer. You're charging me more than double because you're going to find me one in stock, right? That's insane. I found one in stock, and it was $400. So what did I do? I went out there despite this tech, and I put it in myself, and it literally took me like 5 minutes, about the same amount of time it took him to take the part off. So I went from, I don't know, roughly after his initial service fee, because I did pay that, probably from around $1,100, which is what I was going to end up paying, down to about $400 plus 5 to 10 minutes of my time. So there are 3 real-life examples of how I saved anywhere from 20 to 50% off parts and labor simply by watching, sometimes getting on YouTube and just understanding how these installs go, and then obviously shopping around and making sure that I find the person that's going to give me the best deal, right? Because you don't want buyer's remorse. And there's value exceeding price. We've talked about that before. When that value exceeds the price, people buy. So when you get these astronomical quotes, you got to think, is there anyone else out there that might separate, their wants and needs with my wants and needs, and you can exploit that and take full advantage, right? And so not an easy thing to do. All right, so as promised, I'm going to give you the 3 things you need to focus on the next time you negotiate with a service tech, and especially people that are installing things. I've got many more of these stories I'll share with you in future videos, but especially for people that are installing things, doing work, maybe paint around your house, maintenance, etc., etc. Really, really important. All right, so number 1 is, do you work on commission? You want to find out if these techs work on commission or if they're paid hourly or if it's a combination, because that's relevant. Oftentimes, folks that are working directly on commission, especially in the service space, are going to try to bump up those services they're offering you or the products they're selling you because they're paid on a commission basis. Now, this is generally not like, say, in furniture or cars, because they're selling you a car or selling you a sofa, and that they're getting paid a commission on that. That's fine. But on the service side of things, they may try to bump up that service program after the sale. They may try to bump you up to a more expensive product that you really don't need, right? With all the bells and whistles you'll never use. So you want to be mindful of that. Are you on commission? Okay, number 2, what's the breakdown between parts and labor? This is a really good one because some technicians will charge you a margin on the parts, like those guys. $400 part, they're charging me $875, give or take. Some will charge you a small margin. If they make a little money, fine, no problem. You've got shipping and handling, you got to handle the part, okay, fine. But ask them to break it down, because what you'll find is their labor might be $150 an hour, and their parts are a 2 or 3 times multiple of what the product cost you. And you might be able to order that part and then have them install it. Now, they may not warranty it, but most of the time it doesn't really matter. You want to know, what do you charge for parts? What do you charge for labor? And the last thing I would say you want to find out is, are they, and this is kind of part of the last question, but are they charging you a margin on those parts, or are they charging you cost on those parts? Because oftentimes they'll say to you, well, yeah, I'm charging for parts, but I'm charging you wholesale, basically the cost that I pay for it. But not a lot of people do that. A lot of people will make money on those parts as well, as you just found with the hot tub example. Ridiculous. I mean, they're hitting me for a 5-minute repair at $150 an hour. And I understand there's trip charges and all that, whatever, right? But oftentimes they charge a trip charge. These guys did. It's like a $20 gas charge or something like that. And then they're going to hit me with that kind of cost on my part, a little LED panel. Absolutely criminal, man. Absolutely criminal. So the 3 things you want to be mindful of: do you work on commission? What's the breakdown of your parts and labor? And do you make a margin on your parts? And if so, what is that margin? All right, so I hope this video has helped you. I hope it'll put you in a more confident position to negotiate with those service techs. Remember, sometimes these technicians and these folks out there running their businesses want the business more than you need the service. Sometimes you need the service more than they need the business. But you need to make sure that you're vetting that process, because it could be the difference between $50 and thousands of dollars. I have other examples on higher ticket items where I have saved thousands, sometimes tens of thousands. In one case, I saved almost $2 million. No kidding. So make sure that you're in the know, make sure you're ready to negotiate, and make sure that you are confident and ask a lot of questions. All right, so what do you think? Are you going to build a strategy before your next technician comes out and try to maximize that opportunity by saving as much money as possible? Well, I hope so. And if you want more videos like this on the things that we buy, sell, and train on, just subscribe and make sure you share. Thanks, and have a great day.